Good morning and welcome to Paul Strommen, legislative candidate from District 47. Thank you, Paul, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and joining me today is Susan DeCamp, volunteer state president, and advocacy lead volunteers Joyce Beck and Mike Barwig. And I believe that you know Mike personally.
Hey,
so
Paul. I do know Mike. I was going to say I saw him, and I gave him a wave. I didn't know if you saw him.
Absolutely. So thank you. We appreciate you taking the time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50-plus voter and their families in Nebraska. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. So to start us off, Paul, if you don't mind giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign, and if we can kind of keep that to 5 minutes or less, that would be great. And then once we've completed your opening, we'll move into the questions. So thank you and welcome, Paul.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just, last 20 years, I've spent essentially 20 years. 2006, we started the ethanol plant in Madrid, Nebraska. 2007, we started shipping. So I've spent the last 20 years essentially in the ethanol industry, working directly with refiners on the downstream side and working with agriculture on, I guess, the upstream side would be upstream to ethanol, right, Mike?
Yep.
So sort of both ends of the spectrum, ag, refiners, ethanol industry. In 2013, we moved to from North Platte, which is where we were, to Sydney. And since being in Sydney, I've been elected to the Sydney City Council, appointed to vice mayor. I sit on the Rural Workforce Housing Committee for the City of Sydney and Cheyenne County. We opened a small business here in Sydney. Well, actually, we have two small businesses. My wife is a partner at a law firm, and then we also own a liquor store here that we remodeled. It had been the original liquor store in town, so we did that a couple of years ago. So two small businesses, and then I also sit on the Oil and Gas Commission for the state of Nebraska. I was appointed by Ricketts a number of years ago. So small, local, local political, and then on the state side, I've been involved on the state side with the Oil and Gas Commission. So large business, small business, local politics, state politics, kind of have my fingers in all different soups, as they say. So that's my background. Mike knows me. Mike and I have worked together for probably 20 years, Mike. I think that we've been working together ever since we started the plant when you were at Tenaska, right? So it's been a lot of fun. I've been enjoying the campaign. Obviously, like I said at the beginning, our big issues out here are property taxes are number one, and then after that you have economic development and all of the things that revolve around economic development. So if you distill everything out, you'd have property taxes, economic development, housing, healthcare, and healthcare is just sort of a broad swath, right? You've got everything from child daycare to aged healthcare to all of our hospitals that are in need of help. So there's a lot of things that need to be looked at. I've spent a lot of time with the hospitals out here with SRMC, Box Butte General, up in Oshkosh. I've spent some time, I don't know if you guys know Don Lease, but he brought me out to Panhandle Public Health, Aging Out West, Nebraska, out in Scotts Bluff. I spent some time with all of those folks. So I've been trying to better understand that side of the industry. It's not obviously when you immerse yourself in something for so many years, you understand that industry. So from the business side of things, but when it comes to healthcare, there's a lot of things that I'm learning that are complicated, especially when you get to the insurance side of it. So getting better at it. I've got a lot of folks out here that are helping me out. Jason Pettick, who's the CEO of SRMC, and then Lori up at Box Butte. They've all been trying to get me better informed. And then some folks on the insurance side are helping me out as well. So there's a lot to learn. You can't be an expert overnight. So
Absolutely.
that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And what an expansive background that you have. And I think you need more, you need something else on your plate. So why not run for legislature, right?
I do. If you know anybody if you know anyone that's interested in becoming a a commissioner for oil and gas, let us know. We're taking applications. So
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate all your public service. And again, I appreciate giving us a background about where you're coming from and what you're looking at.
I would like to apologize quickly. I have a cat that likes to talk whenever I'm on the phone. So
Great.
you may be hearing that. So I
Love
apologize.
pets.
I'm at home. Mike, stop laughing. All right, go ahead.
We love pets, so they may have, sometimes they have more to say than we do. So
Yeah.
thank you, Paul. We're going to move into our question portion now. And again, we provided you with a set of 3 questions pertaining to the 50 plus in Nebraska. These are issues that are first and foremost when we talk to our members that are coming to light. And so that's why we're bringing to the conversation today. Looking to have a 5-minute conversation on each of the questions just due to our time limits. The first question is on health, caregiving, and home and community-based care. And Joyce Beck is going to take that. So go ahead, Joyce.
Good morning, Paul, and thank you for giving us some of your time and spending it with AARP.
Sure.
So the first question for me concerns Americans or Nebraskans, and 80% of Nebraskans over 45 say staying in their home as they get older is extremely important to them. Home and community-based services and area agencies on aging become important assets to caregivers as they care for their loved ones. Home care not only meets the needs of their loved ones, but it also provides relief for an already strained long-term care industry. So I have 2 questions for you, Paul. What would you do to protect and/or expand the home and community-based programs, particularly recruitment and retention of sufficient workforce and adequate funding for the programs and services that older Nebraskans and their families rely on? And my second question is, what would you do to support the 179,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska?
That's a huge issue out here, workforce, and I think it's probably the same throughout the state. But having a smaller population to draw from it's tough, and it's tough to try and get people to come out. Good people, right? I mean, you just don't want people. People are all over the place. You want good people. I had this conversation up in Oshkosh a couple of weeks ago. They're trying to set up a daycare center, and some of the folks up there said, well, hey, why don't we just build it, and then that will cause people to, if you build it, they will come kind of strategy. And I don't think that works anymore, simply because you have to have the people that are willing to put in the time to do the work and understand the time constraint that it takes to do that work, right? So you have to have people that get up in the morning and say, hey, look, we're going to go do this. We're going to be successful at it. And finding those people is tough. Recruiting those people is even tougher. Ask my wife, she's trying to get attorneys to come out here, and it's virtually impossible. So we have to try and figure out how to incentivize folks to come out. I know that and it's sort of a double-edged sword, right? If you talk to hospitals, they have a problem hiring nurses. But at the same time, you've got these traveling nurse programs that are incentivizing nurses to get involved in traveling nurse programs because they're paying them more, but it's also costing hospitals more. So how do you incentivize people to move into your areas, work in those areas? I think you have to convince folks, hey, look, we're going to offer you a better life out here. At least I'm talking about the western part of the state right now. Mm-hmm. You have to give people the understanding that there's a lot of benefits to being in whatever area you're going to put them in, and then incentivizing them through that. Also, we've got some programs out here that we're using at some of our high schools where we're teaching kids that they can live and work in the areas that they grow up in, right? So trying to keep and retain young talent, incentivizing kids through understanding that they can stay in their communities and that they can work in those communities and be extremely successful in those communities. I think it's beholden on the people in those communities to try and help those kids understand that those things can be done. But outside of that, and incentivization is one of the only ways I think that you can get these people to do that, because they're always looking for more money, right? So how do you how do you sit someone down and say, I've got a lot of anecdotes where I could, we tried to get someone to buy a business out here. We were going to, let me know if I'm running over, by the way. So I just sort of a short, how difficult it is to get people to work. We had a business here in Sydney, a title company that the lady was selling. Our plan was we were going to buy it, myself and another investor. We were going to finance that business for somebody. So essentially, we want the business to stay here. We don't want to run it. We're going to finance this business. We'll buy it, and then we're going to give it to somebody. They can pay that down. We couldn't find anybody that wanted to run their own business. I essentially went out to the community and said, we're gonna give you a business. Here's a business. And we could not find anyone that wanted to do that. And some of the questions we got from people were ridiculous. How much time off do I get? What's my vacation time? How much money am I going to make? What time do I have to show up? And you're looking at them going, it's your business. You decide. And we couldn't do it. So I think it's just a problem. It's just a problem overall right now, trying to get folks to understand that there are pathways to success. They need to take that extra step and realize that they shouldn't be afraid of risk, and that a lot of positive things come out. Well, there's a lot of positive outcomes when you decide to take just a little bit of risk. And so we still don't have a title company in Sydney. If you know anybody that's interested in running a title company, it's still there. So, all right. So I'm sure we need to move on to some other questions.
All right. Well,
hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. And again, investing in your communities is always critical. So I appreciate your expertise there, and also your commitment to doing that, because Greater Nebraska has a lot of value in it, and we want to continue to see it flourish. So thank you for that. Our second question, we're going to switch over now into consumer fraud, exploitation, and protections, and Mike is going to take that. So go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Paul.
Hey.
Scammers are increasingly targeting older adults with scams such as wire transfers, gift card scams, and schemes involving real property. Nationwide, the average victim of elder fraud lost nearly $34,000 due to these crimes in 2023. And in Nebraska, the FTC showed that there were 4,643 fraud reports made. Nearly 9 in 10 consumers agree that lawmakers need to do more to protect consumers from fraud and scams. With that in mind, our questions for you are: consumers lose billions of dollars each year to online, financial, property, and other types of fraud. What will you do to address and ensure that Nebraskans are protected against fraud and deceptive or unfair business practices, and provide opportunities for redress to victims of fraud? In that, would you support enacting laws to require merchants that sell gift cards to post notices, enactment of a consumer fraud restitution fund, and implementation of preventative or corrective measures to assist in combating owner-seller housing impersonation fraud?
I was curious about that. How prevalent is that title fraud? Is that becoming more prevalent in the state?
Susan, take that.
Yeah, Susan's one of our experts. So Susan, go ahead and take that question.
Good morning, Paul. Not that I'm an expert, but I do own a small title company, and I'm a title agent and a registered abstractor. And your offer is very enticing, but I have been downsizing and almost semi-retired now. So, but it's a great offer. I hope someone takes you up on that. But yeah, there is becoming more and more fraud in the area of real estate and title. As you know, a lot of them is the fraud during the closings, you know, the wiring frauds. But recently there have been more. I know last year we passed a bill there were realty companies, and we never found any cases here in Nebraska, but that doesn't mean there weren't any. But nationwide, we were working on a fraud whereby a realty company would go in and offer homeowners a small amount of cash up front. And in return, they would have to sign an agreement that that company would be the listing agent for when they sold that home in the future. And what they didn't realize, a lot of the homeowners didn't realize, it locked you in for 40 years. And
Oh, yeah.
and then they put a lien on the property. And so, and if you did go with someone else, they would charge you a huge penalty, a percentage of the valuation of your property. And so what it did is created a cloud on the title. And it became really hard for the owner of that property to get a loan or to sell it again in the future. You know, it just created lots of problems. So we did get that bill passed along with a lot of other states. Recently, they're talking about deed fraud, where people are going in and impersonating an owner, saying they own this property. Sometimes they've even completely done the transaction. They've done a fraudulent deed, they've signed it fraudulently, and actually filed it at the courthouse. And so then it becomes a lien against the property. So things like that are happening a lot more. I know in the title industry, we've had quite a few videos and training sessions, just particularly on fraud in that area. So we're trying to be proactive on those areas.
Okay, all right. I I would assume that's happening more in your rural areas rather than your
Well,
urban,
yeah, both
or your
both
urban areas
actually.
rather than your rural area, because everybody knows, like, everybody out. If somebody walked into the bank here and said, "I'm X," they'd say, "No, you're not." So, I'm assuming that that's where that's occurring more. Would that be accurate, or?
There, I think it is occurring, like I say, some of those haven't occurred a lot in Nebraska, but in other states, they are occurring in rural areas as well. And a lot of them are targeting vacant land. And one did occur in Lincoln, Nebraska, on a vacant property. That got figured out after the fact, and they did get their money back. But a lot of times, title companies now are being trained to have those flags, whereby, you know, they're really double checking, like notarization and things like that. But some of it was rural property they were targeting. So I guess it's all over.
Okay. I'm in favor of anything that helps protect property owner rights. I don't know enough about the fraud side of these issues to really speak broadly on it. I know that I don't like any of it, and I would like to see better legislation. I agree, you know, Mike had talked about consumer protection, consumer protection bills. I think anything that we can do to protect homeowners, anything that we can do to protect um, uh, individuals from being scammed. I don't. I guess part of the problem is, how do you go after the folks? How do you even find them after the money's been stolen? So it almost has to be preemptive, right? You need to be in front of the scammers instead of behind them, because if you go after them, you're never going to find them. Typically, right there, usually the folks that are doing the phone scams or the internet scams are overseas, so you're never going to get that money back. Maybe if there was I don't know. I don't have the answer, Mike. I apologize. I wish I did. I think that I think if we could sit down and kind of come up with some good solutions on how to help folks out, maybe just getting out in front of people and explaining to them, letting them know that these scams are out there, giving them a broader ability to understand just how wide that net is, and that people are constantly trying to take their money. And I hate to say, I'd hate to tell people not to trust others, but I think that we're kind of in that state of play right now where you can't trust anybody making a phone call to you anymore. You can't trust anything that's coming in via your computer. You click on a link and your computer's shut down. You follow a site. We've had multiple attempts at the ethanol plant, at my wife's law firm, at the liquor store, for people to try and hack that system. So it's prevalent. And again, I don't know enough about how that's happening to come up with a cohesive plan to stop it. But I'd be more than happy to sit down and get more data and more information and come up with some reasonable solutions or reasonable ways to put something together that might be able to protect the consumer, protect the individual, protect the homeowner. So,
and Paul, just so you know, AARP does have a fraud watch program where we do educate older AARP members of these scams as we see them coming down the pike. And I hate to say this, but I don't think anybody knows for sure what to do about it, but we have to, but you're right. I think we need to be in front of it. We have to be preventative, but
Yeah. Yeah, you can't be behind it, because at that point in time, they've lost their home, they've lost their car, they've lost all their money. So if that's maybe offering people better protection, I don't know. I gotta spend more time trying to figure out something.
Yeah.
no
And I
worries.
think, yeah, Paul, and we're not expecting you to have all the answers by any means. This is just, again, conversation to start talking about some of the things and maybe ideas that have been presented. And I would say, most importantly, we appreciate that you're kind of got an open door, that you would be willing to talk about these issues moving forward. So
Oh, yeah.
are in the legislature, and also supporting, anything against fraud and home ownership and that sort of thing. So appreciate your comments on that. Our last question, I'm just going to move us over into a third space, is called livable communities, helping people stay in their homes and communities. And Susan DeCamp's going to take that. So go ahead, Susan.
Okay, thanks, Gina. Hello again, Paul. Nice to have you with us today, by the way. So mine is a two-part question. The first part deals with housing, and then the second part deals a little bit with taxes, particularly homestead exemption tax. So Nebraskans over 65 are the fastest growing segment of our population, and research shows that most of them want to remain in their homes and communities as they age, just like Joyce mentioned in the first question. As housing costs continue to increase, older adults are unable to find housing to meet their needs, particularly when seeking to downsize, and thus they're being pushed out of their communities and homes that they have lived in for years. What will you do to support, incentivize, and ensure the creation of affordable and diverse housing options, such as accessory dwelling units, intergenerational housing, manufactured housing units, and townhomes? And then the second question is, will you fight to ensure that the homestead exemption program is maintained and protected to ensure that older Nebraskans that qualify continue to have access to the tax relief program?
Yeah. So as I stated earlier, I'm on the rural workforce housing for Sydney and Cheyenne. We were able to utilize rural workforce housing, a little bit of TIF, and some LB 840, and we're in the process of building 11 new homes out here because of that. And I think that, as far as I'm concerned, I know as conservatives we're not supposed to be for taxes, but if I can see a return on investment because of that, then that money actually goes back into the pool and is being recycled. So rural workforce housing funds are going to build 11 homes in Sydney. That's going to be 11 families in Sydney. Technically, somewhere between 30 and 40 people are now going to be contributing directly to the economy of the city of Sydney and Cheyenne County as a whole. So there is a massive return on investment on that. So I don't see anything wrong with utilizing funds in that form and continuing those processes. So let that type of funding continue. If we can make sure that our other communities out here who desperately need housing are able to take advantage of that money, I think is huge. I think it's great for the communities. As you said, so those homes will sell somewhere between 275, 325. What we're hoping is they're going to be step ups. So people are going to be moving out of their starter homes into those homes. Those are affordable for people that are looking to step down. If they've got a large home and they want to get into something smaller, those houses would fit the bill. If they want to go even smaller, then they can gobble up those starter homes that people are getting out of. So that puts us in a unique situation where now we have 11 new houses. We have 5 that are almost completed. Then the 6 others are going to be worked on here shortly after they finish off these original 5 that they're building. So I'm all for helping fund these projects, because that money gets turned back into the community, it gets turned back to the state. So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. If we're just using funds to throw away at projects that makes absolutely no sense, that's not something I'm agreeing with. But when it comes to things like this, where you're going to see an immediate return on that investment, it makes sense to me. And then as far as the homestead, sorry, I got a cold, I apologize. The homestead exemption tax, I think, yeah, we need to keep that going. I'm all for making sure that we can maintain that and provide homeowners those protections. So
Great, thanks for
I
your
hope that
thoughts.
helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you for your thoughts on that issue.
And my wife, she was a title agent, so she has all her. So when it comes to all of this stuff, she does oil and gas work, so she likes hiding in courthouses and reading all the old
Yep.
books. So not hiding. She'd kill me if she heard me say that. So make sure that doesn't get
I love
We'll edit that
courthouses
part,
too.
right? Yeah, so perfect. Thank you, Paul, for that. And again, look forward to future conversations, especially on rural workforce housing and workforce development. And again, the housing piece, affordable housing. One of the pieces, again, AARP is really strongly working on is how do we move those older generations who no longer need those 5-bedroom ranch style homes down to some other type of housing that they can settle into that is still independent, that they can still have their own housing because they don't need the step up, to assisted living or those types of housing. So I think there's a great conversation yet to be had on that.
The other piece of that is that there's a lot of areas that don't even know that these are available to them. I've been to some communities now that I'll have these conversations, and they're really interested in how do we get involved? How do we take advantage of these programs? And I think it's just, again, it goes back to education, right? You have to let these folks know that these things are available to them, and then they can take advantage of them. So
Perfect. Appreciate your thoughts on that. We are kind of coming to the end of our meeting time. And so in closing, I'd like to give you back a few minutes to talk with us again about some of your priorities for serving in the legislature, which I know you started to allude to some of that in the answers that you've given. But are there any specific issues or committees or anything that you plan to work on to address during your time as a state senator? So I'll give you the time.
I'm not a single issue guy. I came into this sort of eyes wide open to get a better understanding about how politics work. And, since my time on city council, we've done everything we can to try and bolster economic development. That's kind of my background. And those are the things that I'd like to see happen in the western part of the state. When it comes to increasing the economy, it's just a plus for everybody in that area, the cities, the counties, the towns, the villages. The people all get to take advantage of that. So those, I guess, would really be my priority. My background sort of lends probably revenue or natural resources. Those would probably be the two that would make the most sense. Appropriations, I guess, would be up there as well. So those sort of, if you were looking at the big three, those would be the ones that would make the most sense for me. I know that sometimes it's really not, it might not be up to me to decide where I end up, but if I had a choice, those would probably be the three that would make the most sense. So even though I know that those three intersect, then it would have to be one of those three, and then they throw me on something else. I don't know. General affairs, maybe, because I own a liquor store, and then I could figure out how to.
Yes,
Okay.
the joys of being a freshman senator sometimes
yeah.
are yet to be desired, but we do appreciate your leadership and role on that, wherever you might be placed.
Yep.
And Paul, we are coming to the end of our time, so I want to thank you for taking the time to visit with us. We wish you the best with your campaign, and again, most importantly, thank you for meeting with AARP today. We really appreciate the conversation.
Most definitely. And hey, thank you guys. I appreciate you moving the schedule around. I do appreciate that. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I am more than happy to sit down and talk to anybody. Give me a call. My phone number is on the website. So if you need to ask a question, reach out. If you have any questions, you can't find my phone number, call Mike. He knows how to track me down. He'll even get a hold of my wife for me too. So you guys have a great day, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Say
Paul.
hi to
Take
Ken.
care.
Say hi to
Thank you,
Ken.
Paul.
Take care.